Years ago, when on the weekly walk in the Carthusian house I belonged to in France, one of the brethren, commenting the book of Job, which we used to use quite a lot, singing passages from it at the office of the dead, which we would have weekly chanted in choir, said that it was, of all the books that he liked most, because it was the one that actually spoke from the depths of the heart and expressed the song of man. There is a one-liner in the great French writer Chateaubriand, which says, "Le chant naturel de l'homme est triste." The natural song of man is sad. This week we are having Job, and last week we had Ecclesiastes. Job is in poetry essentially. Ecclesiastes has poetic passages like the one on time, one of the most powerful actually of the whole Bible. It's also been set to music. But both have this in common, that they ask and dare to ask the big questions of man. They dare, as it were, to challenge God. And the outworking of Job after chapter 40 is extremely powerful. God eventually answers back, and we have this cosmic planetary view of things. Where were you? And he goes on to talk about the foundation of the world that he was behind. So too, we can be saying the same thing, making noises, strutting on the stage of life with much noise, and then silence. The tomb is very silent. And these readings, which we would chant on a weekly basis from Job, were in the context of the silence of the office of the dead, a plaintive office. And it used to be said when we were in formation, Odie Miki Kras Tibi, today for me, tomorrow for you, reminding us in formation that these prayers, which we used to say on a weekly basis for the dead, were now for them, but one day it'll come back to you from the next generation of monks praying. We do pray a lot, do we not, for the dead? A practice which we can take with us is the ancient practice of sanctifying the hour. Just last week I had to do part of a programme on clocks in Welsh for Radio Cymru, and the interviewer had done a lot of homework, and there's a lot to a bell. Even the word 4 o'clock in Welsh, pedwar o'r gloch, of the clock. There's a whole history behind that. Even expressions coming into our language, noon. It is nona ora, the 9th hour, brought forward because the monks had to fast until they had said noon in Lent. It happens also in Welsh, pryd noun, afternoon, and so on. Time is, in a sense, punctuated by the bell. It depends where you live. In the monastery, it's all the time. But there is the ancient practice of, when hearing the hour chiming, of pausing. And at that point, one can do two things. One can put the brakes on for the benefit of our own soul, putting precisely a punctuation in the otherwise unbroken rhythm of time. But also one can gain an indulgence by saying the ancient, still indulgenced prayer of Requiem aeternam dona eis Domine, et lux perpetua luceat eis, requiescant in pace. Amen. That contains an indulgence each time, a partial indulgence for the deceased. as you know, these were codified after the Council by Blessed Paul VI in the Handbook of Indulgences, and this one was maintained. Therefore, it's there for the taking. And if one calculates all the times that one would have said that, by the day, by the week, by the month, by the year, and by the end of one's life, one will have helped a lot of souls, and I mean a lot of souls. And do you think they're not grateful? People have obtained many graces when they had great devotion to the holy souls. Remember that. Indeed, we were told this in that same monastery in formation. It's a secret among priests, and this is going back to the old French school. If you have a real intention you're concerned about and you want to get, there's one sure way. Offer, when you're ordained, a Holy Mass for the holy souls. They're so grateful. But I want to zoom into just one thought that we can pick out of this dramatic reading from Job. In the midst of his, as it were, envy of those who can go to the tomb, which is where he wants to be, he does say this, that when one gets there, there's no more noise. Down there, bad men bustle no more. There, the weary rest. Bad men bustling. Does that sound familiar? The Goggle Box is full of bad men who bustle. They too will be switched off one day. And there, they won't have the last word. But it applies also unto us. We have a choice in our innings on earth to be bustling or not. We can call it leakage. As we go through life, we can, in a sense, limit the damage of our state by being aware of it, or carry on being our own worst enemy. Now this applies supremely actually to holy souls, pious souls, because if they're not careful, because of their generosity, they take on everything and become nothing less than holy fidgets. And therefore, they go through their Christian life doing many things for the Lord, but actually can't enjoy the Lord. Why? They eventually settle down to a moment with Him, and what are they doing? They're solving the problems in serving the Lord. All the things they've taken on, they're going through their mind at that point and solving the issues involved. They are in actually the mode that the Lord warned about in that famous passage when He's being ministered to by two ladies. One was giving that ministry of attention, total attention, of being seated at His feet as He taught, and honouring Him with a totality of availability, and the other was serving Him with great love and tenderness, giving the best on the level of the service provided. But the Lord did say, Martha, Martha, you worry and fret about many things, but one thing is needful, and that could be taken immediately as one dish is enough. What I want is your company. Right now, the rest can wait, because tomorrow I won't be here. Indeed, there is one verse which is sometimes quoted precisely in the Eucharistic context. After Holy Communion, the Lord inside is saying, me you have not always with you. Now, if one looks at the quality both of our Holy Communion and even of our Eucharistic adoration, we're actually sometimes, if we're not careful, found off guard. The I believe, still existent mystic Catalina was given to hear what was going on in the head of the communicant in front of her as she came back from Holy Communion. And it was essentially an unstoppable shopping list. And the Lord whispered to Catalina that actually this was going on more than she thought over the Christian world, and that he had other graces in mind for Holy Communion, and he felt that he was being used rather than adored at that point. Does that sound familiar? And how many people spend their hour of adoration simply unable to be still? How many actually reach for the magazines on the windowsill? How many actually don't really let the Lord look at them? They succeed in blocking out intimacy through prayer, if you see what I mean. One can actually avoid engagement of eyeball to eyeball on the level of the soul by a huge amount of vocal prayer to be got through. And it happens more than one thinks. It's holy activism. Now let's go out of the sphere of that and go then into life itself. Somebody comes on the phone, there's such and such happening in such and such a place, would you like to come? What will be your reaction? Oh yes, I'll come. Did the Lord get a word in edgeways there? Who decided? It would be wiser, given the risk of each night doing something, of actually saying, if it's a person of prayer, I'd like to pray about that before I give an answer. And then you bring it to Jesus. And maybe he'll whisper to you, actually I wanted you for myself that night. Many holy people are always in holy conversation, and holy conversation soon becomes less holy. I once heard in a letter, a friend of mine in a seminary, he's now a priest, actually I taught him to say Mass when he was just being ordained, he muttered in one of his letters from the seminary, the favourite occupation of this place is meetings. Meetings. People prefer just to have a quiet night with Jesus, but all these meetings, in the end, did they do more harm and good to the people who actually need intimacy before ordination? If that's the case before ordination, what it's like afterwards, I don't know. Many priests can't really engage with the people because they've got to go to meetings each night. It's a pity. Because as with Jesus, there can be no intimacy, so with the flock, there can be no intimacy if it's all done in meetings. The soul is loved into being, again, eyeball to eyeball, heart to heart, and nothing can replace the priest with the heart of his people. He's not a managing director. He's a lover of souls, and if he doesn't meet those souls, he's working at a chess game. But also, in our formal prayer, it can enter in. As Catholics, we have the advantage of having a structure which lets us relax. I heard it actually when a student talking to evangelical Protestants. They said that there is an advantage with having a set liturgy, they're referring to Anglicans and Catholics, compared with the setup where it's always ad lib, because one doesn't know quite what's going to happen. Whereas with the set liturgy, one can relax because one knows what's going to happen next and when it'll finish. But there's a B-side, and it's not indifferent. And I'd like to hit it head on. It's this. Whereas, despite the disadvantage of not having a structure, our free church brethren have the advantage of not being able to go into prayer which is not meant. It just can't happen. It has to come from the heart, or it's not there at all. So we have to be careful that if we're not on guard, we can kid ourselves. Because the advantage of having a structure is also the great disadvantage of being, if you like, a temptation to get into automatic pilot and think we're praying. Now, there are tests to see whether that's the case or not. In the case of the liturgy of the Eucharist itself, a test is this. Where is the focus of attention? Is it on Jesus? Or is it on the performance? And the litmus test is there a round of applause? If so, what's the dynamic? Is there silence before, during and after? If not, what's the dynamic? So too, in the realm of popular devotions, which are hugely important in Ireland, the test is this. Do we address heaven with the same respect and rhythm and speed and attention as we do each other? If I were to speak to you now at the speed at which some of the rosaries are said in Ireland, you would be cheesed off in 5 seconds. Why should we imagine that heaven is interested in a prayer in which we're not the slight bit interested? It's not working as a sacrament. A sacrament works from the work done, in Latin, ex opere operato. The priest, ordained, going through certain gestures and words, is no longer himself. The Holy Spirit is guaranteeing that the Holy Spirit himself is at certain points in command and giving his graces. And at a certain point, the Lord himself is using the voice box of the priest. This is not the case in popular devotions. It works on another principle. It's called from the work of the one operating. Ex opere operantis. Do you see the difference? Therefore, it's not magic. Now let's get this straight. The Rosary is an occasion of prayer. The fact of making certain sounds is one thing. As in a conversation, you can be talking to somebody and you might say to them after a while, "You're not listening!" So too, we can find ourselves in making noises in prayer where actually the current is not passing. The mind is not there. The soul is not engaging with the person addressed. We're miles away. And then the rest will follow. One will detect that actually the speed indicates that it's actually no longer honouring God, but it's becoming a duty to be accomplished. And if it's not there, look around and open your eyes and ears. It's still there. The high-speed Brands Hatch Rosary is around. And we've got to the end. Amen! Victory! Now let's get to the important bit. And out comes the tea. But it's entered also into our liturgy. Unfortunately, by osmosis, the speed of the Rosary is often the speed of our liturgy. Open your eyes and ears again. Is it not true? Speed is the norm in Ireland. And it horrifies some people coming from the continent, even England. What's going on here? Why are we in a hurry to get through the most sacred act of our day? It makes no sense. But I just want to finish with one point which sums it all up. The illness of the pious. As in the case of the high-speed Rosary and liturgy, the illness can be detected. As in the case of the person who can't mentally engage in a relaxed way with Jesus in adoration or Holy Communion, but has to be fidgeting away, so too, in our whole life on earth, we can spend our one innings on this side of eternity repeating until death one big blunder, being too busy. At the end, one will see, 1 second after the separation of soul and body, the quality of our moments which come back to us on our copybook as we open the pages of This Is Your Life. Oh, I could have done better with those 60, 70, 80, 90 years. I was absent to myself. I was all the time fidgeting and talking, all the time outside my soul, which right now, for the first time, I face, nuda, cruda, as I am, without any more distraction. One day in retreat, that thought hit me, so I give it to you. I wrote this afterwards. Busy. A vessel is but filled when emptied all, and when alone all bare. For there is here no room for two to be, and membranes small that hide the busy soul move very near to many worlds and galaxies of thought that chance to travel by, and we are not at home and fully there, when elsewhere caught in orbit wide our little orb forgot. Oh, many rays at wander, sunder this our part beam awhile. Let us not stand too long where we belong, and bid us miss the touch of something touching in this land, where hurrying and worrying were all that rested ne'er, 'tween rested membranes small.